trap of beating everyone and losing yourself. Nikola Tesla experienced this prison like few men in history. New York, January 7, 1943. A thin body lies motionless in room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel. The eyes are still open, staring at the ceiling as if searching for something invisible. All around, stacks of yellowed papers, scribbled equations, diagrams of machines that were never built. The man who illuminated the entire world died alone, in the dark, surrounded only by pigeons that came to his window. 2 hours later, before the medical examiner could even examine the body, American government agents broke down the door. They didn't come to pay condolences. They came to steal. Safes were opened, drawers were emptied, 80 boxes of documents disappeared that night, taken to a destination that remains classified to this day. What was it about those papers that scared the most powerful government on the planet so much? Tesla was 86 years old. He had no home, no family, no fortune. He lived on a small pension and crumbs offered by former admirers. But decades earlier, this same man had been America's most celebrated inventor. Newspapers called him a genius. Millionaires begged for his attention. He had defeated Thomas Edison in the war of currents and proved that alternating electricity was superior. He had created the engine that moves the modern world. I had imagined the radio, the remote control, the wireless communication. So how was it possible that a man who won all the intellectual battles of his time ended up like this, abandoned and forgotten? The answer is hidden in a wound that Tesla carried his entire life, a wound that he himself didn't know he had, because there is a type of victory that destroys from within. There is a type of achievement that demands such a high price that, before you realize it, there is nothing left of who you were. To understand this tragedy, we need to go back to the beginning, not to the beginning of fame, but to the beginning of pain. Smiljan, Croatia, 1856. Nikola Tesla was born during a lightning storm. His mother, Juka, looked up at the bright sky and told the midwife that it was a bad omen. The midwife replied that the child would be a child of darkness, but Juka corrected in a firm voice, "No, he will be a son of light." This phrase shaped everything that would come later. Tesla grew up believing he was born to illuminate, that his mission was to bring clarity to the world, that any personal sacrifice was justifiable if it served that greater purpose. But there was another event in Tesla's childhood that is rarely mentioned, an event that planted a seed of guilt so deep that he spent his entire life trying to compensate without ever succeeding. His older brother, Dane, was considered the genius of the family. Everyone said Dane would be extraordinary. Nikola lived in the shadow of this expectation, until one day, when Nikola was 5 years old, Dane died. The circumstances were never fully clarified. Some say it was a horse accident. Others suggest something more sinister, that the rivalry between the brothers had consequences that the family preferred to hide. What we know for sure is that, after Dane's death, Nikola started having visions, blinding flashes of light, images so vivid he couldn't distinguish them from reality. He saw complete machines in his mind, working perfectly before he built them. It was as if his brain had split and something extraordinary had entered into the fissure. But along with the gift came the curse. Tesla developed obsessive rituals. I needed to calculate the volume of each bite before eating. He counted his steps compulsively. I couldn't bear to touch human hair. He was terrified of pearls, to the point of refusing to speak to women who wore them. These behaviors, which today we would recognize as obsessive-compulsive disorder, were seen at the time as eccentricities of genius. No one realized that they were symptoms of a mind at war with itself, a mind that tried to control every external detail because chaos reigned inside. And it was this fractured, brilliant, and tormented mind that landed in New York in 1884, with 4 cents in his pocket, some poems, and a letter of recommendation for Thomas Edison. Tesla didn't know it, but he was about to enter the biggest battle of his life, not against ignorance or poverty, but against something much more dangerous, a man who turned people into steps. Edison looked at this tall, thin immigrant and saw an opportunity, not a colleague, not an equal, but a useful tool. The war of currents was about to begin, and Tesla still didn't understand that even when you win, you may be losing something that you can never get back. There is a moment in this story that changes everything, a moment when Tesla discovered the true price of his genius. But before I reveal what happened, I need you to understand the scale of that was at stake. If this story is resonating with something inside you, if you feel there are truths here that need to be heard to the end, subscribe to the channel. What comes next will completely transform the way you view success, loneliness, and the invisible cost of being extraordinary. Thomas Edison was not just an inventor, he was a predator of ideas. When Tesla entered his laboratory in Manhattan, He saw machines everywhere, sweaty workers working 18-hour days, and at the center of it all, a stocky man with eyes that calculated the value of each person who approached. Edison built his fortune not by being the most brilliant, but by being the most ruthless. He patented everything. He bought inventions from others and put his name on them. He destroyed rivals with smear campaigns. His employees called him the Napoleon of science, and he loved the comparison. Tesla was hired to solve a problem that no one could. Edison's direct current generators kept breaking down, catching fire, exploding. The technology was unstable and expensive. Tesla analyzed the system and proposed a complete solution. He said he could redesign the generators, make them efficient and safe. Edison smiled, that smile powerful men give when they find someone naive enough to be exploited. "If you can do that," said Edison, "I'll pay you $50,000. $50,000 in 1884 was equivalent to more than $1 million today. For Tesla, who barely had money to eat, it was an unimaginable fortune. But more than the money, it was the recognition, the chance to prove your worth. Tesla worked like a man possessed. He slept in the laboratory. I skipped meals. He spent almost a year redesigning 24 different types of generators. He created automatic control systems that revolutionized machine efficiency. He delivered everything he promised, and more. When he finally presented the completed work to Edison, expecting to receive the agreed payment, Edison laughed. "Tesla, you don't understand American humor. There was no agreement. There weren't $50,000. There was just one naive immigrant who worked for free for months while Edison profited from each improvement. Tesla resigned the same day. What happened next defines the character of each of them. Edison moved on without remorse, as if nothing had happened. Tesla spent the next few months digging ditches in the streets of New York to survive. The man who redesigned electrical power was burying cables for $2 a day. But something happened during this period of humiliation, something Tesla never told anyone. One night, while digging a ditch in the rain, Tesla had one of his visions. But this was different from all the others. It wasn't a machine. It was a scene. He saw himself in the future, standing in front of a crowd as a gigantic tower transmitted power wirelessly to the entire world. He saw cities illuminated without cables, vehicles powered by invisible waves, humanity connected by a network of frequencies. And then the vision changed. The tower was on fire. The crowd had disappeared. He was alone, looking at the ruins of everything he had built. Tesla emerged from the ditch that night with unshakable certainty. He was going to build that tower. And if the vision was right about success, maybe it was right about destruction too. But at that moment, he didn't care. I needed to beat Edison. He needed to prove that he had been underestimated. He needed the world to see what he was capable of doing. Revenge, when fueled by humiliation, becomes fuel. And Tesla had enough fuel to set a continent on fire. In 1887, two businessmen approached Tesla with a proposal. They wanted to fund his research on alternating current, not because they believed him, but because they saw an opportunity to profit from the war against Edison. Tesla accepted. He founded the Tesla Electric Company and immersed himself in his work with frightening intensity. In less than a year, he registered more than 30 patents for alternating current systems, including the induction motor that still works today in practically all machines in the world. Alternating current was superior in every way. It could be transmitted over long distances without losing power. It was safer, cheaper, more versatile. Edison's direct current looked like a wagon compared to a high-speed train. Edison realized the threat and responded in the only way he knew how, with violence. He launched a campaign of terror. He paid children to capture stray dogs and cats. He electrocuted the animals in public demonstrations using alternating current to prove that Tesla's technology was deadly. He called it Westinghouser, in reference to George Westinghouse, the businessman who had purchased Tesla's patents. The peak of cruelty came in 1890, when Edison helped develop Return the Electric Chair. He purposely made it work with alternating current. I wanted Tesla's technology to be forever associated with death. The first execution was William Kemmler, a man convicted of murder. The chair did not work properly. Kemmler needed 2 shocks. His body caught fire. The smell of burning flesh filled the room. Journalists vomited. One of them wrote that it was worse than a gallows. Edison declared to the press that alternating current was to blame. Tesla responded that it was the fault of those who didn't know how to use the technology correctly. But inside, Tesla was devastated. He had created something to light up the world, and his rival was using it to kill. Here's something few understand about Tesla. He didn't want to defeat Edison just for pride or money. I wanted to prove that science should serve humanity, not exploit it. For Tesla, electricity was almost sacred. It was the life force of the universe made visible. Seeing this force used for executions was like seeing someone desecrate a temple, and it was in this state of mind, torn between the ambition to win and the horror of what victory would cost, that Tesla received the news that would change everything. George Westinghouse was bankrupt. The costs of the war against Edison had drained his company. The bankers were about to take control, and the first demand they would make would be to cancel Tesla's royalty contract. That contract was worth millions. Every AC motor sold in the world paid royalties to Tesla. If technology spread as he predicted, he would become the richest man in America. Westinghouse visited Tesla in person. He explained the situation. He said that if the contract was maintained, the company would be destroyed. Alternating current would die with it. Edison would win. Tesla looked at the man who had believed in him when no one else did. He looked at the papers on the table. He looked at the future he had imagined, and he made a decision that would define the rest of his life. What Tesla did at that moment is still debated by historians. Some say it was the noblest act ever performed by an inventor. Others say it was the most catastrophic mistake. But everyone agrees on one thing. After that decision, nothing was the same. Tesla took the contract in his hands. Millions of dollars in future royalties. The guarantee of a lifetime of wealth and security. He looked at Westinghouse, who was waiting silently, his face marked with exhaustion from months of fighting bankers and creditors. And then Tesla tore the contract in half. "You saved my honor when no one else believed in me," said Tesla. "Alternating current needs to live. If that paper is the price, then it's worth nothing." Westinghouse tried to argue. He said they would find another way, that Tesla didn't need to give up everything. But Tesla had already decided. For him, it wasn't a question of money. It was a question of frequency. He believed that when you act out of fear of loss, you vibrate in scarcity. When you act for greatness, you vibrate in abundance. The universe would somehow compensate. Historians estimate that Tesla gave up somewhere between $12 and $15 million at the time. In current values, it would be more than $300 million. Enough money to finance all of his future research, live comfortably until the end of his life, and never depend on anyone again. Instead, Tesla chose the freedom of alternating current, and he chose his own financial prison. The victory over Edison came in 1893 at the Chicago World's Fair. Tesla and Westinghouse lit the entire exhibition with alternating current. 200,000 visitors a day walked under arches of white light, marveling at that glow that seemed to come from the future. Edison had offered to light the fair for $1 million. Westinghouse made it by less than half, thanks to the efficiency of Tesla's system. That night, as crowds cheered and newspapers declared the end of Edison's era, Tesla walked alone through the empty pavilions. The lights were still shining, but there was no one to see. He stopped in front of one of the lighting towers and stood there in silence for almost an hour. A watchman found him and asked if everything was okay. Tesla responded something strange. He said the light was beautiful, but it was incomplete. That lighting up the world wasn't enough. He needed to connect it. The watchman didn't understand, but Tesla was already elsewhere. His mind was already working on the next project. In the vision he had that rainy night while digging ditches, in the tower that would transmit energy wirelessly to the entire planet. The following years were the most productive of his life. Tesla moved to a laboratory in Colorado Springs, in the middle of the mountains, far from the prying eyes of the city. There, he began experimenting with wireless power transmission on a scale never before attempted, built a 60-meter tower with a copper sphere on top. He created artificial lightning 40 meters long. It illuminated lamps from miles away, without any wires connecting them to the power source. One night, his experiments caused a blackout throughout the city of Colorado Springs when the electrical discharge burned out the local company's generator. Tesla was proving that his vision was possible. Energy could be transmitted through the air, through the upper layers of the atmosphere, through the Earth itself. Humanity would no longer need cables, poles, distribution networks. It would be enough to build transmitter towers at strategic points on the planet, and energy would be available to everyone, anywhere. But there was a problem that Tesla refused to see, a fundamental flaw in his plan that more practical men immediately noticed. If energy transmitted freely through the air, how would you charge for it? Tesla did not care about this issue. For him, energy was a natural right, like air or water. The idea of measuring and charging for each watt consumed seemed petty, a mental limitation of people who couldn't think on a civilizational scale. But investors cared, and a lot. In 1901, Tesla convinced J.P. Morgan, America's most powerful banker, to finance his most ambitious project, a gigantic tower on Long Island called Wardenclyffe that would transmit power and wireless communications around the world. Morgan invested $150,000, a fortune at the time. But he did so because Tesla presented the project as a wireless telegraphy system, a competitor to Marconi's radio. Morgan wanted to dominate global communications. I wanted to control the messages that would cross the oceans. What Morgan didn't know was that Tesla had much bigger plans. Telegraphy was just a pretext. The true goal was the transmission of free energy to all humanity. Here is a pattern that repeated itself throughout Tesla's life. He was too brilliant to be dishonest, but too naive to be transparent. He didn't lie, but he omitted. I believed that when people saw the end result, they would understand and support it. He didn't realize he was building his own trap. Construction of Wardenclyffe began in 1901. A tower nearly 200 feet tall with a hemispherical dome at the top and an iron root system that extended more than 100 feet underground. Tesla called it his magnifying transmitter, a frequency amplifier that would use the entire planet as a conductor. But costs exploded. Tesla needed more money, and when he finally revealed his true plan to Morgan, the reaction was glacial. Morgan asked just one thing: where do I put the meter? Tesla had no answer. There was no meter. That was the point. Energy would be free for everyone. Morgan terminated the financing immediately. Tesla begged. He wrote desperate letters. He offered bigger stakes, full control of the project, anything. Morgan never responded. For a man who built his empire by controlling resources, the idea of free energy was no utopia. It was economic sabotage. And here something strange happened, something that historians still cannot fully explain. As Tesla fought to save Wardenclyffe, Guglielmo Marconi transmitted the first radio signal across the Atlantic. The world celebrated Marconi as the inventor of wireless communication. Awards, honors, instant fame. But Marconi used 17 of Tesla's patents to carry out the transmission, 17 patents registered years earlier, which described exactly the principles that Marconi claimed to have invented. Tesla sued. The legal battle lasted decades, and although the American Supreme Court eventually ruled in favor of Tesla, recognizing that he was the true inventor of the radio, this only happened in 1943, months after his death. All his life, Tesla saw another man take credit for his creation. He saw Marconi win the Nobel Prize that should have been his. He saw history being rewritten while he was still alive. But Tesla did not waste energy on bitterness. There was something more urgent consuming his mind, something he discovered during experiments in Colorado Springs and never revealed publicly. In his notebook entries from that time, there is an enigmatic entry. Tesla wrote that he picked up signals, regular, repetitive signs that could not be of natural origin. He believed he had intercepted communications from another planet, probably Mars or Venus. The scientific community ridiculed the claim. They said Tesla had gone crazy, that isolation in the mountains affected his mind. But Tesla never backed down. Until the end of his life, he insisted that he had captured something, that we were not alone, that the universe was trying to communicate, and that it had built the antenna capable of or come. What exactly did Tesla capture on those nights in Colorado Springs? What did he hear that convinced him so deeply? He left clues in his writings, coded fragments that researchers are still trying to decipher. The answer may be connected to your final project, a weapon so powerful he believed it would make all wars impossible, a machine that governments around the world tried to buy, steal, or destroy. Tesla called it Teleforce. The press called it a death ray, and it was this invention that sealed his fate. The death ray was not a fantasy. Tesla described the machine in precise technical detail. A particle accelerator capable of projecting a concentrated beam of energy 300 kilometers away. It could shoot down 10,000 enemy planes instantly. It could create an invisible shield around any nation, making it inviolable. He didn't want to sell the weapon to just one country. I wanted to give it to everyone. If every nation possessed the same absolute defense capacity, Tesla argued, none would risk attacking. War would become mathematically impossible. In 1937, Tesla began sending proposals to governments around the world: United States, Soviet Union, England, Yugoslavia. He offered the Teleforce plans in exchange for funding to build a prototype. Governments responded, but not in the way Tesla expected. Intelligence agents began to surround him. His room at the New Yorker hotel was searched several times while he went out to feed the pigeons. Their correspondence was intercepted. Men in overcoats followed him through the streets of Manhattan. Tesla realized he was being watched, but instead of backing down, he did something surprising. He began to talk even more openly about his inventions. He gave newspaper interviews describing the death ray. He appeared on radio programs explaining how it would work. There was a strategy behind the apparent recklessness. Tesla understood that as long as the knowledge was only in his head, he was a target. Any government could kidnap him and extract the secrets. But if the basic principles were public, killing him would be pointless. the knowledge would have already escaped. Tesla was using transparency as a shield, but he kept one crucial part. The final details, the exact specifications that would allow the machine to be built, were kept secret. He said they were in a safe, which would only be revealed when world peace was assured. In 1942, a year before his death, Tesla received an unexpected visitor, an elegant woman who introduced herself as a representative of a European government. He offered $20 million for the complete Teleforce plans. $20 million, more than Tesla had seen in his entire life. Tesla asked which government she represented. The woman hesitated. Then he told the truth. It was Nazi Germany. Tesla was silent for almost a minute. When he spoke, his voice was different, cold, without any trace of the accent she normally carried. He said he would rather die feeding pigeons than live knowing that his creation had destroyed humanity. The woman left without plans, but the visit had consequences. American intelligence learned of the meeting. If Germany was interested, then the weapon was real. Tesla stopped being an eccentric old man and became a matter of national security. Surveillance increased. Tesla began to be followed 24 hours a day, but there was something the agents didn't notice. On his daily walks, Tesla always visited the same places: a library, a law firm, a jewelry store, always in the same order, always staying the same time in each one. Tesla was giving away something, parts of a puzzle. The complete Teleforce plans were not in a single vault. They were divided into fragments, scattered throughout New York in trusted hands. Each fragment was useless on its own. Tesla created a security system based on human trust. The problem is that he overestimated loyalty. On January 7, 1943, a chambermaid found Tesla lying in bed, eyes open, not breathing. Death from coronary thrombosis, alone with no one holding your hand. But before the body cooled down, the hunt began. The FBI broke into the hotel safe. They claimed that they found only theoretical speculations. They took everything anyway. The Office of Alien Property confiscated 80 boxes of documents. Tesla's nephew was interrogated as a suspected spy, and then the twist happened. One of the fragments of the plans appeared at a private auction. It was from an employee at the library that Tesla visited. He had kept the fragment for years, but when Tesla died, he decided the promise was no longer valid. The news spread. Other guardians realized that money was involved. Pieces began to appear in black markets on 3 continents, but there was one piece missing, a central part, without which none of the others made sense. That piece never appeared. Historians assume it was destroyed or never existed, but there is another possibility, one that would explain why, 80 years later, intelligence agencies still keep Tesla's documents classified. The centerpiece exists, and it's right where Tesla left it. Tesla once said that when science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in a decade than in all previous centuries. He wasn't talking about abstract metaphysics. I was giving a clue. Tesla's ultimate secret isn't in a metal safe, it's on a frequency. A specific vibration he discovered in Colorado Springs when he picked up those signals that could not be of terrestrial origin. And to access this secret, humanity must first learn to listen. But who really won and who lost in this story? The answer is not what you expect. Thomas Edison died in 1931, 12 years before Tesla. He died rich, famous, surrounded by family and admirers. The President of the United States asked Americans to turn off the lights for a minute in his honor. The man who stole ideas and destroyed reputations was buried as a national hero. Tesla watched from afar, did not attend the funeral. When journalists asked his opinion, Tesla said only that Edison was an inventor, but not a scientist, who avoided mathematics as if it were a disease. Tesla spent his life believing that merit would win, that scientific truth was more powerful than manipulation, that the universe rewarded those who operated at high frequencies. But Edison understood something that Tesla refused to learn. The world does not belong to those who are right. It belongs to those who control the narrative. Tesla despised this game, and he paid the price. But here's the final twist, the one that changes everything. Tesla didn't lose. Look around you. Every wall outlet uses alternating current. Each electric motor uses the principles he patented. Every radio transmission, every Wi-Fi signal exists because Tesla imagined it first. Edison sold light bulbs. Tesla enlightened civilizations. So why do we still feel like Tesla lost? Because we confuse victory with reward. We think that winning means receiving the prize in life. But that is Edison's definition. The definition of who plays the small game. Tesla played a game with time. I knew I would be misunderstood, but I also knew that truth has its own frequency, and that frequency sooner or later resonates. Today, Tesla is more famous than he ever was in life. Electric cars bear his name. Millions study his ideas. He became a symbol of pure genius who chose humanity over profit. But this image is incomplete. Tesla was not a saint. He was a brilliant and flawed man, too proud to accept help, too naive to protect himself, too obsessed with building human connections. That's the real warning of this story. Not about Edison, about Tesla. You can win all the external battles and lose the internal war. It can light up the whole world and die in the dark. He can give everything to humanity and keep nothing for himself. Tesla believed that sacrificing his personal life was necessary for his mission, that relationships were distractions. But frequency is not isolation, it's connection. The universe is not made of particles vibrating alone. It is made of waves that meet and amplify each other. A frequency alone is just a sound. Two frequencies in harmony are music. Tesla understood the physics of vibration, but he didn't understand the physics of the soul. He has spent the last few years talking to pigeons. He said that a white dove was his companion, who loved her like a man loves a woman. When she died, something inside him died too. It's not crazy. It's loneliness so deep that he needed to create connection where he could. That's the trap. Beat everyone and lose yourself. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small choices. Every time you refuse help. Every time you push someone away because it hinders your productivity. Each time you sacrifice presence for another hour of work. Tesla didn't wake up alone in a hotel room. He walked there, decision by decision, over 86 years. And the question this story leaves is not about Tesla. It's about you. What game are you playing? Edison's, where winning means accumulating, or Tesla's, where winning means giving? And if it's Tesla's, are you keeping something for yourself? There is a third way, one that Tesla never found. You can vibrate loudly and still connect. It can light up the world and even heat your own home. It can be extraordinary without being lonely. But this requires accepting that you don't have to carry everything alone, that asking for help is not weakness, that loving and being loved does not decrease your frequency. Amplify. The universe responds to your vibration. But your vibe doesn't. It is made only of what you transmit. It is also made up of what you allow to receive. Tesla transmitted more than any human of his time, but it closed its receptors. And in the end, all that energy had nowhere to return. You're not just here to win, it's here to vibrate. And to vibrate means to resonate with others. It means being part of something bigger without getting lost in that something. Tesla proved that one man alone can change the world, but it also proved that changing the world is not enough. The human heart generates an electromagnetic field that can be measured from meters away. When two hearts are close together, their fields interact. When they are in harmony, they synchronize. Tesla measured frequencies his entire life, but he never measured this one. If this story touched something inside you, subscribe to the channel. Share with someone who needs to hear this, because the frequency only amplifies when it resonates with others. Tesla turned on the light. Now it's up to us to decide what to do with it, not just to light up the world, but to enlighten each other.